The federal government cannot infringe on the right to bear arms, but can state governments.
If you're looking for trouble.
In the Supreme Court's landmark case District of Columbia v. Heller 554 U.S. 570, 2008, they held the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to keep and bear arms at home, even when necessary for self-defense, after a District of Columbia law banned handgun possession by making it a crime to carry an unregistered firearm and prohibiting the registration of handguns. Further, in the slaughterhouse cases, Louisiana passed a law that restricted slaughterhouse operations in New Orleans to a single corporation. This deprived them of a liberty and property without the due process of law in violation of the 14th Amendment. Otis McDonald challenged the constitutionality of the City of Chicago's federal government gun control laws, arguing they were similar to Heller's. McDonald stated that the right to bear arms is a fundamental right that states should not be able to infringe. Justices disputed whether the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment incorporates the Second Amendment against the states because this would change the interpretation of the slaughterhouse cases from over 140 years ago. McDonald's house had been broken into 5 times, so he bought a handgun. However, in 1982, Chicago passed a handgun ban and refused to issue any more registrations. He and 3 other Chicago residents sued and went through the court system until they were ruled before the Supreme Court because the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit upheld Chicago's legislation banning the possession of handguns. Justice Samuel Alito Jr. wrote the majority opinion, and the court reasoned that the reasons that are fundamental to the nation's game of war or liberty, or are deeply rooted for the nation's game of war or liberty, are appropriately applied to the states through the 14th Amendment. Justice Stephen Breyer and Justice John Paul Stevens wrote the dissenting opinion, arguing that the 14th Amendment's guarantee of substantive due process does not include a general right to keep and bear firearms for purposes of private self-defense. In a 5-4 ruling, the court declared that the Due Process Clause incorporates the Second Amendment's right to bear arms. Chicago's handgun ban was lifted and citizens could purchase handguns for self-defense. The Second and 14th Amendment were violated in McDonald v. Chicago. McDonald's attorney Ellen Gura argued that the Privileges or Immunity Clause of the 14th Amendment should extend to the Second Amendment's protection of the right to bear arms to the state level, a process known as incorporation to prevent city and state regulations from infringing on that right. The City of Chicago also violated McDonald's right to due process. McDonald was a United States citizen, and his stay of Chicago deprived him of property without due process of the law, due process meaning fair treatment through the judicial system in reference to a citizen's entitlement. This case affected the ability of states to regulate the possession of handguns in their jurisdiction and has affected long-held conceptions of federalism. Despite the many politicians who are trying to ban firearms and trying to confiscate guns, the Constitution reads, "The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed," and the Supreme Court ruled that due process is applicable to the Second Amendment not only on the federal level but at the state level. As we've already seen in Venezuela, the overall crime rate has increased after the Chavez government banned private gun ownership in 2012, and in 2015, Venezuela's homicide rate was the world's highest, with 27,875 Venezuelans murdered that year, with a homicide rate nearly 20 times the global average of 6.2. Thanks to people like Otis McDonald, we are able to recognize and prevent the communist lifestyle from becoming a reality.
When clouds appear, things look tough.